Look, I think it was a day where the Mueller investigators, who are supposed to be looking at the collusion or potential collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians, proved beyond a reasonable doubt there was no collusion, because what Paul Manafort was found guilty of yesterday were crimes that he committed 10 to 12 years prior to joining the Trump campaign. That's a very important thing. On the other side, Michael Cohen,
yes, let's get to him,
is an individual who's now pled guilty to 8 charges, 6 of which have absolutely nothing to do with Donald Trump, the Trump organization, or the Trump campaign. That includes failing to disclose proper taxes.
Financial crimes.
Financial crimes.
Absolutely.
The 2 things that Michael Cohen said that we have no evidence to prove is that he was directed by then Mr. Trump to make payments. Now, that's a very different story than Michael Cohen has said for the last 9 months. So which Michael Cohen are we going to believe? The Michael Cohen for 9 months who said that he was never directed to, or the Michael Cohen who's now facing prison who's changed his tune?
Michael Cohen yesterday was under oath. Are you suggesting that he perjured himself when he said that he was directed by President Trump to make those payments? Even the prosecution case is that those payments were made in coordination with. They didn't go as far as Michael Cohen did, granted, but they did say that these payments were made in coordination with the candidate.
Well, the prosecutor also said in there that Michael has a history and a pattern of lying over a long period of time. And we've seen that now, whether it's on his taxes, whether it's through bank fraud, or now through this assertion that he was told by Donald Trump to make a payment. We have no evidence of that whatsoever. We have Michael's own words, who originally he said, I was not directed to do this. I paid this out of my own pocket. He went and took a bank loan out to do that, is what he has said.
But in court, he was very clear. He couldn't have been clearer.
Well, you have to prove the case, though, right? You have to prove that you were told to do that, and there is no evidence of that whatsoever. And so, look, Michael is a serial liar. Either he was lying then, or he's lying in court.
So why was he working for Donald Trump?
Look, it's a great question. Let me tell you this.
What terrible taste in employees he had.
As the former campaign manager, I kept as far away from Michael Cohen as possible. I kept Michael Cohen as far away from the campaign as possible, because I knew Michael is a person who couldn't be trusted, who was a rogue employee, who was out doing things on his own. And those things that Michael did on his own have come back to haunt Michael, and he's now pled guilty to those things, but they had nothing to do with the campaign.
So the president has bad judgment when it comes to hiring people. I mean, certainly it turns out he was surrounded by quite a few criminals.
Well, look, I think as it relates to Michael Cohen, he was a self-described fixer. So that's what he claimed to be.
But not only Michael, I mean, let's look at the list. Michael Cohen, Michael Flynn, George Papadopoulos, Rick Gates, now Paul Manafort. I mean, that's not a short list. These are key people.
Look, we have to go through these people. George Papadopoulos literally had a 30-minute interaction with 20 other people in the room. That was his sum total of relationship with the candidate. So he was not a player in the organization. And what George Papadopoulos has been accused of and has pled guilty to is lying to the FBI. The same crime that Andrew McCabe, the deputy director of the FBI, has also been charged with, but has not been found guilty of. He's been accused by the IG of lying 3 separate times.
So under your kind of description of this, Donald Trump is just an unlucky man who's surrounded by people who have trouble kind of sticking to the truth.
No, look,
and being open about what they're actually doing.
The problem with Paul Manafort is that his crimes that he has now been accused and found guilty of transpired a dozen years prior to him coming to the Trump organization for that 5-month window.
There's another trial here in D.C. next month, isn't there?
And again, that trial is based on evidence of Paul not registering as a foreign agent from when he was working in the Ukraine in the early 2000s. I don't know how you could hold an employer responsible for someone that committed a felony 12 years before if you had no access to their financial records.
So for Donald Trump, what's the path forward? The path forward is continuing to say this is a witch hunt, that all of this is smoke, there's no fire.
Look, the path forward should be very clear. It's exactly what Mayor Rudy Giuliani said. There has to be a time limit where the Mueller investigators are either going to report to the Department of Justice, and they're going to say, we have found evidence, which we've been tasked with, that there is collusion, which we know there hasn't been, or they have to put a path forward that says there is no evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians, which is what their basic premise was supposed to be, to investigate. But it's only fair to the American people that one way or the other, they draw a resolution and they report that to Congress and they report that to the Department of Justice, and that has to come very quickly.
Does that have to happen before the midterms?
I think it should happen by Labor Day. They've been investigating for 2 years. Either they found evidence or they haven't found evidence, but either way, they should write their report and they should let the American people decide before the midterm elections if there was any collusion.
How worried are you, as a political advisor to Trump previously, how damaging this might be, how it plays out coming up to the midterms, there is a risk that the House will flip to the Democrats.
Of course
is
there's
he
a
more
risk.
at risk now?
Well, look, I think you have to decide what issues are most important to you when you go to the ballot box in November if you're a U.S. citizen. Do you care about U.S. military? Because if so, Donald Trump gave them a giant pay raise. Do you care about economic security? Because our economy is growing better than it has in a dozen years.
Steve Bannon says this is a ballot on impeachment. Is he right?
Look, this is a ballot that comes down to who do you want to lead the country going forward? Do you want Donald Trump as the President of the United States, or do you want potentially Nancy Pelosi? And that's what the people, when they go to the ballot, are voting for. They're deciding which direction do they want to bring the country. Do they want economic security, national security, and homeland security, or do they want to go back to the days of Speaker Pelosi? And we're going to find out what that answer is come November.
Corey, thank you.
My pleasure.